think as an artist, like boiling it down to trying to discover what your voice is, and that doesn't happen overnight. Like everyone kind of has their own path. There's no right or wrong reason. There's no, if you do this, then this is going to happen. Because it's different for everyone.
During my last podcast, right, there was this. So Steve ended up saying that you have to have a very instinctive understanding of cinema.
Yes.
Right. What does that entail for you?
Understanding of cinema?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I wasn't really exposed to the classics until later in life. My parents, for whatever reason, I don't necessarily fault them, and I kind of actually am grateful for this, but I wasn't necessarily exposed to a lot of the old classics. They just didn't really have an appreciation for it. But later in life, I started diving into it once I had started building my career as a cinematographer. And it gave me a newfound appreciation for some of these movies. And I think it's a combination of, it's knowing all the ins and outs of like the tech in this day and age doesn't necessarily make you a better shooter. It definitely, I feel like DP cinematographer it's a very left brain, right brain hybrid role, right? Like you have to know some of the tech. You have to know, for example, like what affects lighting, what affects your depth of field, just everything. There's so many like weird, like nitpicky, like ins and outs on the tech side. Aside from that, it's also the creative side. How color influences move, how camera movement influences mood. And then going back to old previous cinema, I feel like having an understanding of, like knowing your history, knowing like the history of cinema and not necessarily being an expert at that, but just like pulling inspiration from some of those greats. There was, back even 20, 30 years ago, there was such an appreciation for the art of it. And, people would spend years making these films. And at the end of the day, it was, you were still navigating the minefield of like, what makes a good film all the way from pre-production to post. Like what, you have some that turned out great and you have some that were shit.
Yeah.
But, ultimately, like, I feel like nowadays there's such a saturation of it, and such a demand for content, through all the streaming services and through, social media and whatnot. And it's, in a lot of ways, turning what we do into a commodity and kind of taking like the art out of it. That's the most discouraging fact. But it's also, there's the I guess the flip side of that is like, the barriers of entry are a lot lower now.
Yeah.
And
because of the number of projects,
the cost of technology, the cost of like any of the film tech has kind of gone down.
Yeah.
And just a demand for it, right? There's like such a demand. Like you pull out your phone and it's, there's ads. You're just bombarded by apps and ads. And so there's that too. But I think it's kind of just navigating this current climate and just kind of staying true to the art. Like what inspires you, what gives you your voice. You're not always going to know that. But like, I think at some point, I don't know if it ever will click. I don't know if it's clicked for me. I don't know if it's clicked for some other people, but I think it's like a day-to-day challenge of mine to kind of just like walk through life and like be inspired by something new that I see. So as cliche as that sounds.
No. I mean, I personally love it. I love that approach,
Yeah.
But at the same time, since like you said, there's such a great amount of content these days, right?
Yeah.
And you are a cinematographer, you're an artist, you're somebody who's working in the industry, right? But at the same time, you're a consumer of these things too, like consumer of content. As a consumer, as a viewer, this great number of content, like there's so much content now. How do you think that shapes you as a viewer?
As a viewer, I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day. He's a camera operator, and we were both trying to find a movie this last year that inspired us or that we didn't think was total shit. And it was really hard. Like, I think we were able at the end of the day to only name like 2 or 3 films that, wow, like those were decent. We actually liked those films.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because we're in the industry and we're kind of like numb to it now, or if,